The Razorbacks are officially done with their bye week, and they head into their next biggest test against the Auburn Tigers on the road. Why the Razorbacks' time is now if they want to make sure that they finish out the season strong. We'll get into all of that, as well as talk about where Arkansas fits in the SEC, as the current state of things is kind of peculiar. And also Razorback basketball with an exhibition game tonight. It's all going to come up on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. This episode of Locked On Razorbacks is brought to you by Sling TV. Sling has something for everybody, especially when it comes to college football coverage with the massive lineups of games across the ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, and SEC. I can always watch the games I want on Sling, and now you can too. Check out Sling TV to see the massive lineup of games that they have all season long. Sling, the TV you love for the price you'll love. Try it today. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend and enjoying the bye weekend, as I know that I certainly did, not being able to have to travel or have to be stressed or upset or have to calm down the masses of Razorback fans was kind of a nice little gesture, a nice little thing to have for this weekend. But now we move on. We turn the page, and we have another big game to talk about, which I know we'll preview a lot this week against the Auburn Tigers. And I'm excited about this game. I'm excited where everything's going to be going. But it's like now that the bye week's over, it becomes real. Like now it becomes everything is on the line. This is the time for the Razorbacks. The time is now, which may sound very cliche and very lame, and that's fine. It probably is a little bit. But the reason that I state it that way is because I believe that the Razorback football team still can have a really good season this year and still can finish extremely strong to the season. But the thing is that with all their ups and downs and all arounds and their inconsistencies and their problems defensively and everything, it makes it really tough to fully buy into the fact that this team can go 5-0 down the stretch. I mentioned it a little bit last week and how it's possible they can, it could happen, but the confidence level that people may have as far as Arkansas actually pulling that off would be pretty low. And I wouldn't argue with you. I'm not going to sit here and try to argue with anybody that thinks that Arkansas is going to at least be tested heavily in this final stretch and maybe even lose some games too. But the thing is I talked about last or 2 weeks ago, about it, Sam Pittman being a defining moment for him. And some of you, I don't think, understood that because some of you got mad at me about it. They're like, oh, you're trying to say he's going to get fired if he doesn't win the game against BYU. No. I was saying that this was going to showcase in that game against BYU the level of still go get 'em attitudes, the level of not giving up. Like all of that was going to show you game, because if Arkansas would have lost that game to BYU and they would have been 3-4, lost 4 straight heading into the bye week, we all probably would be sitting here at this time and day and on this podcast saying that Arkansas will be lucky game. Like that's where we would be at. And that's why that moment, that game was so important for Sam Pittman to completely and totally change that narrative to where now, after beating BYU, we sit back and we say, okay, they could do this. They could pull this off. At least gave you some momentum, and everybody getting healthy this weekend against Auburn is going to be big, which I know we'll hear from Sam Pittman a little bit from the media perspective as well. So this is kind of the same thing though this week. Sam Pittman talked about how they needed the bye. After the Mississippi State loss, he says, we need the bye. We don't have it, but we need the bye. And people kind of maybe took that out of context, but forget all that. What I'm looking at it as, okay, he thinks he needs the bye. The coaching staff think they need the bye because they know if they can get to the bye, things are going to change. Things are going to get better. Things are going to turn around and go forward and be great for the Razorbacks. Well, the bye has come and gone. Your bye week hit, Sam Pittman. So now that you got what you wanted, Now that you're in a position to where you needed to be in after that Mississippi State game, not only beating BYU, but having that bye week and getting everybody healthy, now is the time that you have to prove yourself that this is still going to be a great season. You got what you want. Now, you still got a couple injuries. I think besides, or at least Catalon and Ladarius Bishop are the ones that are still going to be out for the whole year. Like, they're not coming back. But Sam Pittman made it sound like everybody else was coming back. Okay, that's huge, especially in the secondary. All the guys that were banged up and hurt look like, of course, they could use a time for rest. Bumper Pool's been dealing with a lot of injury. Maybe he'll be good to go. Like, that's great. That's huge. So now the rest of the way, there's no excuse. No, there's no excuse for you giving up 50 points. There's no excuse for you not going out and being able to execute offensively. There's no excuses for that. Your team should be ready to roll right now. And they should be ready to head into this final 5-game stretch completely and totally rejuvenated, as almost it's a new season, which I don't like using that, but in a way it is. Because all you got to look at it is, hey, we hit some bumps in the road. We went up and got hit in the mouth a few times. We had some disappointments, some failures. But after some time off and some time to get rested and get our minds right, now we see opportunities where we have 5 weeks, 5 straight weeks against beatable opponents, where we can go out there and we can win at a high clip at the end of the season and finish with a better record and a better year than what we had last season. That's what I mean by their time is now. Can they prove to us that this bye week was something that they're going to benefit from? Can they prove to us that that win against BYU is something that they can build upon momentum-wise? Can they do that? I think they can, folks. I think they can. I think that they can beat Auburn this weekend on the road. They opened up as a 5-point favorite or a 3-point favorite, just kind of depending on where you're at. But Arkansas was a favorite where it opened in this game. They have Liberty at home they can win. Ole Miss and LSU, tough games, but you got them at home, and you can win those games. And then on the road against Missouri, one of the worst teams in the SEC at the end of the season, you should for sure beat them. So you have a great opportunity in front of you to close out this season in a major way. And if you're able to just find a way to go 5-0, like I'd take 4-1 for sure, get you to 8-4. But if you found a way to go 5-0, then everything's just gravy, because you go 9-3. That A&M game would still sting, but you think about just all the good momentum you have to finish off the season and to possibly have a great bowl game, possibly a 10-win season, maybe go back to a Florida bowl game, whatever it may be. You have all of that, and it's right there for you. So that's what's really at stake here, and that's what's really possible right now. But it's a matter of, can they get it done? And then, as great as that would be, though, I would start thinking about if Arkansas was able to pull off the 9-3 season, I'd be as happy as can be. Don't get me wrong. But it would make me start to think of, like, okay, so is this going to be a reoccurring thing every year where the Arkansas Razorback football team is going to start off strong, hit an absolute detrimental stretch in the middle of the year, then finish strong? Hopefully there's a way to fix that and remedy that. But listen, they can make it happen. They're good enough to. But you got what you want, Sam Pittman. You got your bye week. What do you got for us? What are you going to show us? What do you got in your pocket? Razorback fans are very interested to see what happens next. Our partners at Nissan have worked with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play from the Razorbacks in their weekend game or throughout the history of our alma mater. And since the Arkansas Razorbacks didn't play this past weekend, this week's thrilling moment comes from when Arkansas took on Auburn in a previous game. And as I mentioned there in the crawl, Arkansas has only beaten Auburn once since 2012. That's disgusting. That's a game that needs to be won. And in the losing streak to Auburn needs to come to an end rapidly. And hopefully it does. And it should, again, happen this weekend. So you're in a position now where you can finally end it. But the last time Arkansas beat Auburn was actually in 2015. During a time in that season where Arkansas was up and down, didn't really understand how good of a team they were. was very disappointing in the start of the year where they lost 2 non-conference games to Toledo and Texas Tech. Then they lost to A&M. They got smoked by Bama. Or not smoked by Bama. I guess Bama was later in the year. I forgot which other game they lost. But either way, the Auburn game was coming. Auburn was coming to town, and it was a must-win game, a game that was extremely needed for the Razorbacks, where they led pretty much the entire game. But just like in most cases under Brett Bielema, they gave up a late lead, and Auburn was able to come back and tie it to send it to overtime. Auburn gets the ball first and ends up scoring a touchdown in their first overtime. Arkansas has 4th down, and they got to make a play, and Brandon Allen is able to find Jeremy Sprinkle for a touchdown to extend it to another overtime. And then it goes to another overtime and another overtime until finally in the 4th overtime, Arkansas is able to score first on a touchdown, which I believe was from Cody Walker. And when Arkansas is on defense, it's 4th down and 9, and a big play made in the secondary by Arkansas to stop Auburn, and the Razorbacks get the victory in 4 overtimes. It was a great game, great moment. Arkansas that was the last time they beat them, and that's pretty sad, but hopefully they end up getting a victory this weekend as well. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs across Nissan with their new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, the Armada, or the Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so continuing on with the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, I'm looking at the rest of the SEC. Excuse me. And this past weekend, there wasn't really anything great. I mean, we kind of looked at it going into the weekend, and, there's nothing to really hang your hat on or be excited about. But the few SEC games that did happen, Tennessee they blew out UT Martin. Like, sweep. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that. I think they weren't down, but it was close for 2 minutes. I saw people tweeting. I was like, oh, well, the hangover for Tennessee is real. They won 65-24. So that game happened. Alabama destroyed Mississippi State, which was not surprising. It was kind of funny, though, because Mississippi State, I think I saw a stat that they hadn't scored a touchdown in Tuscaloosa since 2014. I was like, oh, that's a long time. And they were about to not score a touchdown, but they did at the final play of the game with 0 seconds on the clock. They did score a touchdown, and they lost 30-6. But Bama looked really strong. Now, the interesting game that Razorback fans got to look at was how LSU spanked Ole Miss. And Arkansas is going to be playing both of these opponents at home later in the year. But LSU beat them 45-20. Ole Miss didn't score a point in the second half. And LSU just ran them off the field. Now, there's a couple of things in this game particularly that I look at. First off, this is Ole Miss. Yeah, that's what happens when Ole Miss finally faces a decent team, because they have gotten the patty cake schedule all season long. The only game that they had that was decent was Kentucky, and Kentucky blew that game. Ole Miss was not the better team that day. Kentucky just kept getting in their own way and turning the ball over twice in the red zone. But when you play Troy, Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech, Tulsa, Vanderbilt, Auburn, I'm sorry, they were not a top 10 team. And they were giving up a ton. They gave up 34 points to Auburn. Are you kidding me? 27 points to Tulsa. They're not a good football team. And once they ran into a good team, you saw what happened. They got smoked by LSU. So I was pretty happy to see that, because it finally got everybody to understand that, and again, I don't know how Ole Miss got that schedule, but it finally got the people to wake up and saying this team is not that good. So that was number one. But two, LSU's looking stronger, and they're getting better as the season goes on. They looked like absolute doo-doo in the beginning of the season, especially that loss to Florida State. And then they got smoked by Tennessee. But, they kind of went through a stretch where the only decent team they played was Mississippi State, and they beat pretty handedly. But they barely beat Auburn, only by 4 points. They barely beat Florida by 10 points. So, there's been times where they've looked good and times where they've looked bad, but against Ole Miss, they looked really good. And they have a bye week, and then they play Alabama, which is going to be huge. But they got Arkansas after Alabama, which is great for Arkansas, because if you ever wanted a way to kind of reverse it or maybe get a little bit of a hangover, that would be the game to have it, especially at home. So, and also, by the way, and this game too, and maybe I'm bringing up stuff that people don't care about, but in this game too, like LSU fans rush the field. Are y'all kidding me? Are y'all serious? Y'all won a national championship 3 years ago, and you're rushing the field when you beat Ole Miss? Get out of here, dude. That's lame. That, and like, I'm not trying to be the rushing the field police, the storm chasing police or anything like that. But that's lame. Come on. You're LSU, for crying out loud. Okay, you didn't have a great year last year, or really the year before. It was pretty average. But you're going to sit there 3 years removed from a national championship and rush the field when you beat Ole Miss? Come on. Pathetic. Like, when Arkansas beat Texas, that was at least gave them a reason, because they've been terrible for 4 straight years. But yeah, I thought that was really stupid and lame. But anyway, Missouri beat Vanderbilt 17-14. Like the battle of the worst. Like, Arkansas better destroy Missouri. Like, they better beat them so badly that they have to. It just needs to be done. And then South Carolina beats A&M, and they're at 5-2. Now they're a top 25 team, which I think is a little premature, because South Carolina got smoked by Arkansas and Georgia, and the only decent team that they've beaten this year is Kentucky. But that was when Kentucky did not have Will Levis, if I'm not mistaken. I want to make sure I get that right. Yeah, they had their backup quarterback in there, and they beat them by 10. So I think the love for South Carolina is a little weird. They're 5-2, but they beat Georgia State, Charlotte, South Carolina State, Kentucky, and A&M. Okay, but you got smoked by Arkansas and smoked by Georgia. So I don't believe that they're a top 25 team. But here's the thing. They got Missouri next. That'll win that. And Vanderbilt next. But then they finish the season Florida, Tennessee, Clemson. They ain't winning any of those 3. So they'll probably go 7-5. At least they should. But they're not going to win. I don't think they'll beat Florida. I don't think South Carolina's good, to be honest. I just shows you how pathetic Texas A&M is. And that's what makes it even worse, and it just makes me even sicker. Arkansas has an embarrassing loss on their schedule this year. You know what? I thought that Arkansas was done losing to the Western Kentuckys and the North Texases of the world. But this season, they lost just an equally pathetic team in Texas A&M. And it drives me up a wall. I cannot believe that. Like, I understand that, sometimes you're just going to lose games that you shouldn't. But the fact that Arkansas lost to A&M this year still makes it extremely embarrassing. And they played their worst game by far this season, like not even close. They played their worst game against A&M. People say Mississippi State, but no, you had your backup quarterback and you were just riddled with injuries. No, against A&M, you had no excuse. You just played your worst game and you lost to a pathetic, disgustingly terrible Texas A&M team, and that sucks. So it hurts. It hurts more. You should have won that game, but still. That's just another funny thing about A&M that I'm like, woo. The guys got the balls to fire Jimbo. Don't know. You probably should think about it, because this guy, I don't care what anybody says. Oh, with the number 1 recruiting class. Oh, but they're so young. Okay. He's been there for, 4 years now? 5 years now? I think it's 5. Okay. You've been there 5 years and you've had like one good year, and it was the COVID year. But other than that, you've been pretty terrible. Pretty lame. For that much money and that much great recruiting, you should be at least an 8 to 9 win team every year at the minimum, at the floor. And this year, you may not even be making a bowl game. Like, Texas A&M's 3-4 right now, and the rest of their schedule, they got Ole Miss next, loss. Florida next, loss. No, I don't know. That one could be a tough one. At Auburn, they probably lose. I don't know. Maybe if Brian Harson's still there, they may win that one. Then they have UMass, and they have LSU, which they're losing. So you could be sitting at best case scenario in their final 5 games, get 2 wins. They could go 5-7. 5-7 is a realistic thing. How the mighty have fallen. How hilarious is that? All right, folks. I got to tell you, with times you get active outside, and, especially when the weather's just perfect right now, you're going out for runs and whatnot, trying to enjoy the weather. Or maybe you're trying to go out and enjoy the fall weather, go to these pumpkin patches that apparently everybody's doing. Whatever it is, when you go out in public and you're outside and it's a little bit warmer than what you're expecting, you're going to start sweating. And how embarrassing that can be when you're out there with your significant other and you lift up your arms to have your kid up in the air, or whether you're lifting a Christmas tree or a pumpkin, whatever it may be. And as soon as you lift it up, everyone's like, "Ew, that guy," because you're just drenched right there under the armpit. Pretty embarrassing. You don't want to be that guy. Well, luckily for you, there is something great that can help you out, and he can help you out right now. It is SweatBlock. That's the thing about SweatBlock. It is something that not only is able to combat the odors, but also combat the sweat more so than anything. So that way, when you're doing those things outside, and anytime somebody sees you lift up your arms, you have no embarrassing watermarks. It's completely and totally gone. And SweatBlock, what's great about it is it was invented by somebody who struggled with this problem, a doctor who struggled with this problem. And so not only is it doctor created, but it is doctor recommended as well. So you, or if someone you know has embarrassing sweat and is experiencing this or odor, try SweatBlock today. You can save 20% with promo code locked on at sweatblock.com. Again, that's saving 20% with promo code locked on at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Razorback Basketball is going on tonight, and that's exciting. It's an exhibition game, though, so I know that people probably don't get as excited for that as anybody else that gets excited for games and whatnot, but I think it's kind of cool. I think it's cool to have the fact that you're got a game tonight. It's not going to be on TV or anything like that, but the way you can listen to it is on the Razorback Game Day app. But it's a ticketed event. I know there's going to be a huge crowd there tonight. People are going to be checking them out too. But, just a few things. Obviously, the Texas game later this week on the road will be on the Longhorn Network, so you have a chance to watch it. But the thing that is going to be interesting to see is what Muss does with the starting lineup. That's the thing I'm going to be looking for the most, because we know that, like, the only ones that I feel like are going for sure to start would be Nick Smith and Anthony Black. I feel like those are the ones that for sure are going to start in these games. And then probably Devo, you would think. Like Devo would start. But besides that, I don't really know. What's he going to do at the forward spots? Is he going to be Trevin Brazil? Are they going to throw him into the mix? Or I should no, take Devo. I think Ricky Council will also be the starter. I think he'll be a starter between him and Devo. But either way. But, is Trevin Brazil? Is it going to be Jalen Graham? Is it going to be the Mitchell twins? What are they going to do with that forward spot, the guys down low and all of that? That's the thing I'm going to be most fascinated about to see is who is Muss trusting, at least in this exhibition game, what he's shown in the most in practice, of who he thinks is worthy of getting that starting spot. So I'll be looking forward to that and checking that out as well. But it should be great. And basketball season will be starting up here in just a couple weeks officially. And we'll be able to start seeing, is this team living up to the expectation that they have, which is an extremely high expectation as well. Appreciate everybody listening into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNabors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.